What is up, guys? My name is Jason Ankin and this is my vlog channel. So yes, we have another video for you lined up today. We're going to be talking about meditation today again, and this is going to go into my collection of videos about meditation. I'm going to actually list the a list of things that we're going to do, going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about my meditation experience. Two, I'm going to talk about the different types of meditation I've practiced and give a basic description of each. I'm going to talk about my current practice and what I'm looking to do in the future with my meditation. I'm going to give you a basic description on how to actually meditate. So if you haven't meditated before and you want to learn how to, you want to stick around for that one. I'm going to talk to you about a concept. This is probably one of the deepest ideas that I've discovered with meditation. It's the idea of the relationship between meditation and renunciation. And then number 6, we're going to talk about the dissolution of the self, i.e. how basically in deep states of meditation your self kind of vanishes. And then 7, the final thing is why meditation is the most important spiritual practice that you should follow. So yes, the first one is basically my meditation experience. So yes, I've mentioned this before in past videos. If you have not already seen those, you should check them out. I will maybe link them up here or in the description. So yes, basically, I have been meditating since about 2012. So it's 2019, started in 2012. That's about 7 years. Now for the first 2 years I was meditating, I was really doing it on and off. I was just experimenting. I wasn't really a meditator. I was literally trying the practice out. And basically it began one day when I was just bored in my room, and I was sitting in my room and I had nothing to do. It was just one of those days where it was just like, I've got nothing to do. So I just decided to practice meditation. Now obviously up until this point I had been reading a lot of books on world religion and philosophy and stuff, so I guess picked it up vicariously through reading those books, and maybe something in my subconscious said that I should start practicing now. So basically what I did is I set a pillow down on the ground and began meditating there and then, and I did like a 10-minute practice, and it was really interesting. It was a really interesting experience to go through, given that I had never done it before. And I started practicing like once a week ever since then. And even from then I started to notice a change in my psychology, in my perception of things. And I had some really, really interesting experiences very early on. So one of the things that I had that made meditation kind of stick with me is that from the very beginning I had quite a few profound experiences with meditation. And maybe I'll do a video on my experiences with meditation in the future. But yeah, that's how I began it. So for the first sort of 2 years, 2012, 2013, I was on and off experimenting with different methods. I was dabbling with things like Qigong and basic meditation practices. I wasn't really doing anything formal because I didn't really understand what I was doing. But then around 2014, I basically started to take it more consistently. I started practicing like twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. And more or less from there, I've experimented with a full range of different types of meditation protocols. So yes, all of the different, the number 2 thing that I want to talk about is, so that's a basic round off of my meditation experience. And yes, I've been doing it for about, since 2012 to now. And my meditation practice right now is I do 30 minutes of meditation last thing at night. So yeah, the different types of meditation I've practiced, I practiced a full range of different meditations you can do. So there's meditations of the body, there's meditations of your emotions, there's meditations of your mind and stuff like that. So meditations of the body that I've practiced is things like relaxation training. I've practiced breathing exercises. I've practiced things like visualization exercises. I've practiced mindfulness. I've practiced things like loving kindness meditation. I've done concentration meditations. I've done meditations where I try to have what's called thought vacancy, so no thinking whatsoever. and they all have different sort of benefits. So I really like the physical methods as well, things like deep relaxation. So for example, relaxation exercises, you can either do what's called cognitive or somatic relaxation methods. So a cognitive method of relaxation would be what's called autogenic training. So autogenic training is basically where you use phrases such as my arms and legs are heavy. You could be lying on the ground and you would repeat these phrases over and over again. And as you're repeating these phrases, you induce the feeling of your arms and legs being heavy. This is actually a cognitive form of meditation because you're using your speech to control your body. But then you would have also what's called somatic forms of meditation. Another method would be progressive muscular relaxation. So this is where you basically tense the muscles up really, really tight, and then you relax them. And then you tense them up really, really tight, and then you relax them. And you do this systematically all the way through all of the muscle groups of your body. And by the time you're done, your body is just extremely relaxed. And that's a somatic or a physiological method of relaxation that I've done. I've done different methods of breathing exercises. So there are different things you can do, like nasal breathing and stuff like that. But the method that I prefer is yogic complete breathing. So you have sort of 3 different levels of breathing. You've got the lower, which is breathing from the diaphragm. So diaphragmatic breathing, or you've got what's called intercostal breathing. So intercostal is basically where you expand the lungs laterally. And then you've also got what's called upper. So this is your upper breathing, where you're actually breathing in the upper part of your chest. Now, what's interesting about a complete breath is a complete breath combines all 3 methods. So it starts off with diaphragmatic, then it goes into intercostal, and then it ends up with an upper. And as it's one big deep breath, like a big... So you're fully expanding the lungs, and then fully exhaling as well. And that's probably my favorite method because it really sort of expands the lungs, and you almost feel like after you do this practice for an extended period of time, this becomes like a natural method of breathing. So when I sleep, I can feel like I pull my, or when I'm going to sleep, I can feel I do deep breathing. I'm not breathing high up in my throat or my nasal. I breathe quite deeply. So it's very good for sort of fully learning to how to expand your lungs. Then you've got things like visualization and stuff like that. So visualization is more to do with like basically learning how to imagine images, but you don't necessarily have to just see images. You can also visualize sounds, or imagine sounds rather than visualize them. You can imagine sounds, you can imagine sensations in the body, you can imagine smells, you can imagine tastes. So imagery can be used for all of the senses, not just the visualization. And these are very useful, one for training your senses, because you basically, as you become more, as you do these practices, it actually tunes your senses up, so you become much more aware of sensory information coming in. But it can also be used for different exercises like learning how to manifest your goals, being able to visualize your goals and being able to visualize how you would achieve those goals and stuff like that. Because there are people who are not that good visually, so visualization exercises could be used to improve that. I've also done things like emotional practices, so loving kindness meditation, which is 5 stages of sort of, you basically repeat this mantra, be well, be happy, stuff like this here. I don't want to go into too much detail, but you can check that out. Loving kindness meditation, you'll be able to find videos and stuff online. It's a Buddhist form of meditation. I've also done things involving gratitude, so practicing things like counting your blessings and stuff like that. So it is also very useful for improving optimism and improving positivity. And then sort of more of the mental types of meditation, things like thought vacancy and mental focus. And these are really for gaining control of the mind. Like I said, raising self-awareness or self-consciousness. and also gaining control over your sense of self. So for example, thought vacancy helps you sort of inhibit your impulses, and it makes you much more, essentially much more in control of your mind, basically, rather than sort of your emotions controlling you. So there's a basic overview of different meditation practices that I've tried, so it's quite a full range. Now my current practice, regardless of all of those practices that I've dabbled with, I always seem to come back to this one key practice, and it's the method that I use practicing as someone who studies Taoism or Taoist meditation. Taoist meditation is referred to as sitting and forgetting, or sitting in oblivion, and this is the method that I always seem to end up back at, because it's just the most fundamental method of meditation. It's the most effective, it's the simplest, and so it's very simple. All that you do is basically sit perfectly still and sit perfectly silent, and that's the meditation practice as in all of its detail. And what I currently do is I'm doing 30 minutes of that in the evening, and basically I just find it to be it's the only meditation that really gets me into that deep void, and I can get there virtually every time, because the practice of just sitting still it quiets everything down, it slows everything down. It's almost like when you're just before you're going to bed. It's kind of like when you're just about to go to sleep. It's the same sort of thing. You kind of find like a space where you don't move, and all of the body begins to progressively slow down. So you're almost like switching all of the systems in the body. You're steeping everything down, and that seems to be the best method of doing that. Just sitting still, sitting silently. It just seems to slow everything down until you get into that deep meditative void. So yeah, like I said, I'm doing 30 minutes a day in the evening, last thing at night. I prefer evening meditation because it literally is just before you go to bed, which I feel is the best thing to do. Like I will do stretching in the morning because I've woke up, and so I need to wake my body up and do something physical. And then in the evening, I like to do meditation because it helps to wind down. So in the morning I like to wind up, in the evening I like to wind down. And the future of my practice is basically, my goal is to work towards doing 1 hour of meditation last thing at night, and basically every couple of months I'll just add on 5 or 10 minutes until eventually I'm doing 1 hour. And once I hit 1 hour, I'm probably not going to really do much more than that. Yeah. So yeah, how to meditate. So yes, basically this is a basic description of how to meditate. So, like I said, I'm going to describe how to do sitting and forgetting. It's really simple. Now, the method that I use, I actually sit on this chair last thing at night because I have lower back problems, so I have really long legs, so I'm 6'2", so I have great difficulty sitting with my legs crossed without causing pain. And I used to have a stool a kneeling stool, a meditation stool. And again, I've got back problems because the stool has this forward tilt. It naturally makes my back contract, so it ends up causing pain, and I can't actually sit in that position for more than 20 minutes. So I actually use this seat, and I sit down and sort of lie back. There are different things you can do. You can lie down, you can use a stool, you can sit cross-legged, or you can use a chair like this. Also, make sure that you're in comfortable clothes. Make sure that your environment that you're in is quiet. Make sure there's going to be no distractions around you. I would also suggest that you make sure to do your meditation on an empty stomach. So have maybe at least 4 hours from your last meal, because you want your bowels to be completely vacated. Or sorry, not your bowels, your stomach to be completely empty. So there's no real digestion going on, because you need all of that blood flow to the mind rather than to digestion. And then basically what you're going to do is just absolutely still the body. So find a really comfortable space and begin to just progressively still your body. There is things that you can do, like little sequences, check the posture of your head, check the posture of your shoulders, check your core, check your hips, check your knees and your feet. And once everything kind of feels like it's in the right place, that you can comfortably sit there for the duration of the meditation, then you just begin to just remain totally still. And the focus should be on the stillness. And then also, once you're able to get into that still space, the objective throughout the duration of the meditation is not to move a single inch. Do not move at all, not even a fraction, not even to itch. You can obviously do little tiny movements. Sometimes I will swallow if saliva starts to build up in my mouth, and that's about it. But other than that, I keep as still as possible. And then you try to experience silence. So you experience that stillness and that silence. And what happens is basically, so this moves on to my next point. So what happens is basically you get into this deep void. So part 5, I want to talk about the concept of meditation and renunciation. And this is actually one of the deepest concepts that I've ever learned from meditation. And I would actually say that these two words are actually interchangeable. When you're properly doing meditation, you're properly in a state of renunciation. So most people in sort of spirituality would talk about the idea of renunciation as giving up all of your worldly things. So giving up your house, giving up your car, giving up all your clothes, giving up all your possessions. That's what renunciation means. But we can't ever do that fully, because even if you give up all of your possessions, as you're going through your life on a day-to-day basis, you're alive, you're going to have things in your possession. So for me, the only way that you can truly renunciate is while you're meditating. And what I mean by this is, so when you're doing this stillness and silence, you basically renounce control of the body. So your muscles are voluntarily controlled by you. So when you give up voluntary control of your muscles, you've renounced your body. So you're no longer controlling the body. The body is basically running by itself. When you close your eyes and you sit in silence, you've renounced all of the external phenomena around you, everything that's in your room or the place where you're doing the meditation. You can no longer see anything, nor can you hear anything, because you're sitting in silence and you're not taking in anything visually. So your external environment has been renounced just by closing the eyes and sitting in silence, and then giving voluntary control of the muscle system back over to the body. Then also, when you have renounced the body, what will happen is basically your breathing rate will begin to slow down, because you're not burning energy by sitting, you're burning less energy by sitting still. And that will mean that your body needs less oxygen. So what will happen is your breathing rate will naturally, automatically slow down of itself. And again, once you get into that slow breathing where you're not actually controlling the breathing, that is a renunciation of the breathing back over to the autonomic system. And then when your breathing rate slows down, what happens is this will actually affect brainwave state. So your brainwave states are gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. So when you get into these low, slow breathing states, your brainwave activity slows down as well. So your mind and your emotions essentially become renounced as well. You basically end up in what's the 4th stage is called theta. So in deep meditation, you end up in theta. You don't end up in delta, because delta is pure sleep. And this is the exact same process, like I mentioned. This is the exact same process that you go through just before you go to bed. You do exactly these things. You sit still, your breathing rate slows down, your brainwave activity slows down until eventually you end up in full sleep. With meditation, you're just controlling that to the point of theta, the 4th stage, and no further. So then you're what's in a state of conscious unconsciousness. And basically, when you get into there, I call it the void. But basically what happens is your sense of self disappears. So this gets on to the next, number 6, the dissolution of self. So basically when you're doing this meditation, your sense of identity, who you identify as, all of it disappears. And it's really weird to sort of experience this, because when the self finally disappears, that little part of you that you call that you identify with, when that disappears, you realize that your body is just, it's existing of its own accord. You have no say in what's going on in and throughout this body. It's totally existing by itself. And the only thing that you can identify with is this little inner voice. But once you've quieted that voice down, it disappears. And once that little inner voice disappears, then there's you disappear effectively. And this is basically, it's a really interesting experience to have, and it's not something that I can fully explain by talking to people on camera. It's something you have to experience. And when that self disappears, it's like this, whoa, I don't exist, anymore. Your inner identity has completely and utterly dissolved and detached and sort of vanished. And that's why when you come back into sort of the real world and you start to look about your life, you start to realize, oh, I'm not these things. I'm not my job, I'm not my career, I'm not my, education or my beliefs, or, even my body's really not mine, because it's part of nature. It's just molecules. I eat food and it converts into my physiology. If I stopped eating, my body would stop. It's just, you don't really own anything. You don't own your body. You don't own your possessions. You don't own your family or the living environment where you live. It's all just happening. And basically, when that self disappears, you realize none of this is you. It's all essentially extreme. It's all external to you. Even your body is external to you in a weird way. But again, it's something you have to experience this, and it does take years of meditation. And a lot of the time when you're doing this meditation practice, people say, what's the point in this? What am I doing? Just sitting in silence. And you just have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and doing it repetitively in order to get those lessons. And it's tricky. I always, a disclaimer with meditation, I always say tread lightly. Like, if you're going to start meditation, tread lightly, because you're not going to come out the other end of this process the same. And in fact, when I started to meditate in 2012, this is when I really started to question everything about my life. So I believe it's related to that practice of meditation. Once I started meditating, I started to step back and kind of, what's going on here? I started to ask more deeper questions and more profound questions. So meditation will change you as a person. So I always say enter with caution. And yes, so the last and final thing that I want to talk about is number 7, which is meditation is the most important spiritual practice. And I would actually argue that it is the only thing that you need to be doing if you want to live a quote-unquote spiritual life. I don't care what your religion is, I don't care what spiritual practices you do, except what you believe and all of this type of stuff. If you're not doing meditation, in my opinion, you're not practicing spiritual development. I believe that, like I said, because the concept of meditation and renunciation, these are interchangeable words as far as I'm concerned. Therefore, meditation is the practice. It is the sort of, I could even go as far to say that meditation is my religion. And it's just, that is it, that the practice of sitting still and sitting in silence is the religion. It is the practice. And it's something I always ask, Christians, for example, do you meditate? And if they say no, I know in my core that they haven't got it. They haven't got the truth. They haven't got the answer, because if they're not meditating, it's think about it, right? So even if you take all of the Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the main followers, so for example, Moses, in the Bible it says that Moses got all of his knowledge from the Egyptians. Who are the Egyptians? The Egyptians were magicians. What do magicians do? They meditate. Jesus said in let thine eye be single and thy whole body will be filled with light. Let thine eye be single. Also, Jesus says the kingdom of God is within you. And also, if you take Islam, for example, what people in Muslims do is they follow the Prophet. And what the Prophet did is basically, just before he received his revelation, he spent time in solitude, meditating in a cave. But if they're meant to follow the way of the Prophet, why are none of these Muslims meditating? So it just seems a little bizarre. You can see these great spiritual teachers, Moses, Jesus, and the Prophet Muhammad, they're all basically indicating that you should meditate because that's what they all probably did. So I think it is the crown jewel of spirituality, and I think if you're not doing it, it's basically, even says in the Bible, and it says in Psalms, be still and know that I am God. It doesn't say have faith upon the cross. It says be still and know that I am God. So it's saying when you be silent and you be still, then you can know God. And that's what meditation is. Once you get into that deep void and you've renounced all external phenomena, you've renounced the body, you've renounced your breathing, you've renounced your thoughts and your emotions, you get into this deep empty void. And in that deep empty void, that's where you experience the mind of God. And arguably you could say that God himself is in a deep eternal state of meditation, because God's mind would be perfectly peaceful, perfectly poised, perfectly balanced, perfectly clear and empty, and no defilements, no desires, no impulses, just perfect meditation. So when you get into a deep state of meditation, you yourself can almost lock on to God's mind, even for just a moment. And from there you know God is, be still and know that I am God. And that's why I think it's the most important practice. And I would actually argue that it's the only practice that you need to do. There are other things you can do, dietary practices and fasting and moral codes and stuff like this here. But I believe that meditation this single method of meditation, sitting still and sitting in silence, if you are consistent and disciplined with your practice over a long period of time, it will eventually lead, you will gain all of the knowledge that you will need, you will understand the nature of reality, you will gain control of your emotions and your desires and your fears. You will become a much more aware person, you will become much more healthier. It will all come as a consequence of long-term consistent meditation. So that's basically my video on meditation. I wanted to talk about those 7 points. So thanks for watching, guys. And I will be continuing more videos on meditation. I have thought of the idea in the future of possibly creating a new channel specifically geared towards my study of Taoist philosophy. But I think I'm going to leave it for a while. I want to get much better at using Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Premiere Pro. And once I get much better using those platforms, because then I'll be able to create much more attractive content, because I don't want to talk too deeply about all of the different components of Taoism without presenting it in a really aesthetically pleasing and kind of beautiful way. So guys, that is it for today. So if you have any comments about your meditation experience, you can leave it down in the description below. And to follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at jason.ankin. That will be in the description, or it will be in the about section. And so my name is Jason Ankin. This is my vlog channel, and I will see you next time. Bye.